Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I never tried hood and sliding before. I've always wanted to try it. So looks like I did a number on this hood. But you know what? It don't matter, because I'll show you why. I got a new hood right here. Yeah, this thing is screwed now. So I got a special project today. I'm gonna take a fifth wheel from a tractor trailer. I'm gonna mount it on the top of this Pontiac Vibe, and I'm gonna tow this semi-trailer all the way to California and back. Gonna be pretty crazy. Nah, just joking. Actually, more productive thing. So this car needs brakes pretty bad. They pulsate and they're pretty wore out, and you can see right in there's not much pad left. So I got all my new goodies right here. I got the front pads and rotors and the rear pads and rotors. I'm gonna do an oil change and another transmission fluid flush on this car, just because the transmission fluid's getting a little brown, and I think once I flush it this time, it'll be good and I won't have to worry about it for a while. So first thing I gotta do is get this dust pan out of here and get this car in, just because it's a little bit cool today and I just don't feel like working in the driveway, and it's like drizzling on and off. So yeah, let's get this car out of here and get the other one in. Well, here we are. We got our car in here, we got her jacked up, and we got one of the wheels off. So all right, so what I like to do first is just kind of look and see what's going on in here. Just step back instead of tearing the whole thing apart. Just kind of look and see what you got. You know, just look at stuff like your hoses. You know, grab stuff, move it around, make sure your hoses aren't cracked. You know, grab a hold of your springs like I'm doing here, you know, and give them a good wiggle, make sure nothing's broke. Your tie rods, actually I showed you in another video, but typically before you take the tire off, you grab the tire and go like that, and go like, you know, go the other way with it, and just make sure nothing's loose. But you know, there's a million things you can go over on this stuff, but I don't want to get too crazy with this. This is mostly for brakes, but I could feel on the back of this rotor that this is really wore out. There's a deep groove there, and I could see that the caliper is just about touching on it. So something's a little funky there. But yeah, it's definitely time. So all right, the first thing I like to do when you do these is, instead of struggling trying to get in here and swearing and all that, just take your steering wheel and turn the wheel all the way to the right. Most of the time, if you're up on a lift or something like that, you just leave the key unlocked, and then you can just grab it like this and move it, so you don't have to do it with the wheel. But I forgot and had the key locked. So now you'll see there's two bolts here, and this is pretty much the same on every car. I mean, you know, you get into some like the foreign cars, I say like the Audis and you know, BMWs and that crap. You know, you got different stuff going on, but generally for every car, this is pretty much how they are. And pickup truck, so you got two bolts, the top and the bottom, that hold your caliper itself on. Then you got two bigger bolts behind that hold the caliper bracket onto the spindle. So first thing you do is you get the two bolts for the caliper off. When you're doing this kind of stuff, I prefer that you use hand tools. You can blast these off with an impact if you want, but if something's seized up, you're just gonna snap it off in there, and then you're gonna spend hours trying to get it out, or you're gonna end up buying a new part. You know, at least with the hand tools, you can kind of feel if something's gonna break, because I haven't ever done brakes on this car yet before, so I don't know what I'm getting into. We'll get our caliper pried off here. Just get a screwdriver and work it off like that. Simple. Now some people just leave these hanging right on the brake line like that. I don't like to do that. So you get a bungee cord, you put your bungee cord on it, and just hook it somewhere up on the spring or something. Don't ever leave these hanging like that. It's probably not going to hurt anything. I'm sure you could get away with it, but why take the chance? Because then you break your brake hose, and then you got a problem, and now you're got more stuff to fix. So now that we got the caliper off, we could see in here a little better. There is a little bit of life left on these pads, but I definitely feel a big ridge right here, so it don't matter. We're changing them anyway. You can't always go by how much meat you got on the shoes, because a lot of people before you or whatever, I mean, some people will change 3 sets of shoes for 1 rotor or pads or whatever. I mean, the rule of thumb is to change the pads every time you change the rotor. Me personally, I just see what it looks like. Sometimes I'll go no more than two sets of pad for 1 rotor, but you should always figure on just changing the whole set when you're right in there. Alright, get these bolts out. Sometimes these don't come off easy. I mean, they do, but just get your screwdriver in there and get them off. Alright, so there we go. Now, it looks like this rotor is going to be a little bit of a problem. They get seized right on there. So when that happens, you just get your BFH and give her a couple wallops. That'll usually knock them loose. Alright, so there we go. You can see we got quite a bit of stuff going on with this thing. This thing is pretty well shot. Actually, I'm looking at the camera right now, and that doesn't really do it justice, but yeah, this thing is wasted. Try to see if you can kind of see how deep that ridge is. So I mean, this thing is wasted, so it's a good thing we're doing this. Alright, the next thing you do before you take anything else apart on the car after you get the rotor off, good rule of thumb, don't ever assume that you got the right parts. Always assume you got the wrong parts, because that's what happens a lot. So just match everything up quick. We'll take our rotor and just set it on there. Just make sure everything looks good. You gotta get crazy and put it on a lathe and mic it or anything. Just put it this way. Make sure it's the same diameter, you know, the same thickness and stuff like that. Obviously this one's the same. So we'll get back with that in a minute. Alright, the next thing before you start just tearing everything apart, just take a look. Open up the box and take a look at things. Immediately I've noticed that one says inner, one says outer on it. I'm assuming the inner is the inside of the car, which is this one. So that one inner we got there. Another thing I noticed is these little clips that are on here. So if you look close, because once you take it apart, it's too late. You got one of those little clips there on that side. You don't have one on that side. Back, you got one on that side, and you don't have one on that side. And another thing I want to tell you about brakes, this is probably the most important thing. Only do one side at a time if you don't know exactly what you're doing. because if you don't remember how something goes together, you can always use the other side for a reference. So don't just jack the car up and just tear everything apart and then realize you forgot how something goes together. So only do one side at a time, always, 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 even if you're a professional mechanic, because you know what? You never say never. There's mechanics that have been doing this stuff for 70 years and they still say, well, I'd never seen that before. So anyway, you got that. Alright, so let's get these things banged out of here. There goes my soda. Alright, so we got the clip on that side, so we know we're good there. Our shoe goes in that way. So we know our clip goes on this side on this one. So we got that on there. So now we're all set. Now we don't have to guess. We'll get our hammer and knock these out of here. And they shouldn't come out that hard, so. Alright, so now we got these other clips we got in the package, so we'll just keep an eye on these. So we got the spring part goes on the bottom, so we'll knock them off of there. Get them off however you can get them off. A lot of times you just have to get in there with something. I'd say these brakes are shot on this car. Another thing that I do with brakes is I got one of these grinders and I got one of these soft wheels for it. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's kind of like almost like a scuff pad kind of thing. I call it a cookie. I don't know what they're called, but I like to take my grinder and clean these up a little bit. You gotta go crazy on them. The thing with brake shoes is no matter what you're doing, always make sure they slide easy. I don't think I'm going to have to on this one because of this setup, but don't ever hammer. I've seen so many people hammer the brake shoes in here stiff. I mean, that's just stupid. You know, your brakes are going to hang up. They're going to get hot. That's just ridiculous why someone would do that. You don't want to go crazy, but sometimes you could see this coating that they put on here. You just got to get a little grinder and just grind a little bit off. You don't want them loose in there, but you don't want to hammer them in. You'd want a nice, snug, easy fit. So these ones I think will be fine, but worst case, you know, if you don't have a grinder, a little bit of sandpaper or file or whatever. But just take the time and make sure the brake shoes are free in there. They can release. So actually I'm going to have to grind a little bit, this little tab right here. Just take a little bit off at a time. If they don't want to go, don't force them with a hammer. Don't beat them in there. You will regret that down the road. Alright, so we got them in there nice and smooth. Now the next thing I do is these pins, these sliders, even if they move, you know what? Always make sure these are free. Always, always, always. Don't ever put one back together that's stuck. I've saved some of these before they were seized in there and I got them out. I had to heat it with a torch to get it out. and either turn these down on the lathe a little bit or just put a drill on them and just spun them and worked them back and out with grease. It ain't gonna hurt to load these things with grease, because if these stick, the car's not gonna be happy. The brake's not gonna be happy. That's usually a dead giveaway that one side of the brake shoe wears more than the other, is that these pins are froze up. So next we're gonna come back over here to our brake disc. Probably not a bad idea to get some brake cleaner and just wash the surface down. I don't really think it matters that much, to be honest with you. The first time you go out and you hit the brakes, it's going to burn that oil off, and but that's what most people do, so just do it. Alright, next thing we're going to do before we put our brake disc back on is, you can see all this rust in there, and we had to beat that rotor off to get it off. I'm going to take my little cookie wheel again. Don't do anything aggressive on this, just a little mild grinding disc, and we're just going to clean this up quick. Don't hit the threads if you can help it. You gotta go crazy. Wire brush will work just as good. We're gonna get our grease, Never Seas, whatever you have. I like grease personally. I think grease actually works better than Never Seas. Never Seas is convenient because it's got the little brush in there, but I don't care. I'm a grease slob. Load. Alright, so another thing, don't load 6 tubes of grease on one of these, because what's going to happen is you're going to go drive, and the centrifugal force is going to get this grease everywhere, all over your brakes. So you don't need a lot. Actually, this is probably too much. Put a little on your threads. Yeah, this is probably actually too much, but you know, don't get wicked excessive with it. That's all you need, most. And now we're gonna get our brake rotor and put that baby on. Make sure everything fits good. Turn our wheel back the other way. Everything fits good, so. Okay, now it's time to put our caliper bracket back on. Get this out of the way. That in there. I don't like to grease these bolts here, because if one of these backs out, you're going to be in trouble. I don't like to Loctite them either, because in my opinion, Loctite is worthless unless you're building an engine and the specs call for it. Because you go to get these things out and you can't get them out. I don't even like Loctite. I'll leave it at that. You go to get a bolt out and you can't get it out, and it's a pain. And then sometimes if you use the red Loctite, there's instances where you snap the bolt, and you know what? If you make sure your bolts are tight, and there are instances where you want it on certain applications, but I think most applications you don't need it. So that's just my opinion, though. If you want to fight trying to get the bolts off and use Loctite, and go for it. Always make sure these bolts are tight. I've got to bust them off, but I'm sure there's torque specs and all that if you want to get right down to the nitty gritty, but I'm a backyard mechanic. As long as they're tight, you're good. Alright, so on to the next step. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so they got one of these little special tools here. This is a brake caliper piston compressor. You could do this with a C-clamp or vice grips, whatever, and you could probably even put your foot on it somehow and push it. But these tools are only like 15 or 20 bucks, and they're well worth the money, because That's what they're made for. Use the right tool for the right job, makes life a lot easier. All right. Well, we're going to push our piston back. Actually, before we go too far, I want to show you something. I already pushed this piston back a little bit, so we're not going to see it much, but we got a master cylinder right here. And a lot of people like to make sure their fluids are topped off throughout the lifetime of the car, which is great. But as far as the master cylinder, I wouldn't recommend topping that off a lot unless you're topping it off so much that you obviously have a leak. Because as your brake shoes, your brake pads wear down, it causes this piston to come out more, which makes more area for fluid in there, which in turn makes your brake fluid level decrease. So a lot of people will top it off, top it off, top it off, and then when it comes time to do their brakes, you push the piston back and all the fluid comes out and makes a big mess. Not a big deal, but you know, so if your brake fluid level's going down, that's pretty good, you know, indication that you're going to want to do brakes or check something out. But as you can see, we don't even have that one pushed back all the way yet, and we're already at the max level. Most of these caps are vented, so you don't have to pull the cap off, but that could vary with a different car. I'm not going to say one or the other. I just wanted to cover that before we went too far here, because just remember that was at the max level right now. So after we do the other side and the back, we'll check it again, and I'm just going to take a wild guess and say that we're probably going to be overflowing fluid by that time. All right, so we got our piston pushed back flush. You always want to look in here, make sure your seals aren't dry cracked, make sure good indication is you always want to make sure these push back easy. If you get your tool on this and you really got to crank and push that back, just get a new caliper. If that pushes back hard, or a lot of times you'll do these brake jobs and these will start leaking fluid around here, just get a new caliper. Don't even screw with it. It's not worth it. The caliper is probably only like 50 bucks depending on the car. It don't matter if it's 500 bucks. You don't take shortcuts with brakes. Do brakes right no matter what the cost. Most important thing on a car is steering and brakes. And so just remember, these bolts are small, so don't go ape shit tightening them. These bolts here don't even do anything other than just hold that in place. There's no pressure on them or anything. All this thing does is squeezes. It doesn't, these bolts, nothing, no torque goes on these bolts. All right, there we got one side right there. Just make sure everything moves all right, and should be pretty good to go. So I'm going to do the other side, and we'll get back with the next step. Okay, now I got the front wheels back on, all the front brakes are all set. So as you can see, I don't have the biggest garage I'm working with, and I'm going to wait to do the back brakes. Don't worry, we'll get to them. But first, I'm going to do the oil change and the transmission change because the front of the car is already up and it just makes sense. So we're going to do that next. Okay, I'm not going to change the filter this time. Those of you who watched the video when I first got this 2009 Pontiac Vibe, there's a few videos I got on this car. I changed the filter and everything. I mean, you should change a filter again, but this fluid out, you'll see it when it comes out. It's not black, it's just a little dark. If it's really black, you always want to change a filter. I mean, so, you know, this is just a little dark, and I'm just going to flush it again just because it's not going to hurt it. And I don't feel that it's necessary to change the filter at this time. So we're just going to do basically just a change. I'll take this plug out here. Actually fortunate because a lot of vehicles don't have a plug to drain the transmission fluid. You have to pull the pan. And if you're going to pull the pan, you might as well change the filter. So whether it needs it or not. So we're just gonna do the oil. I'm just trying to, as you can see, it's not that bad. It's a little dark, but it's not like black like it was when I first got this car. Check that video out if you haven't watched it. And that was very black. Actually, it made me nervous. But I mean, I think I probably put about 20, I don't know, 20,000 miles-ish or something on this car. I don't know exactly. And the transmission shifts beautiful, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Well, I'd say this thing's pretty well drained. It's been probably a half hour, so I'll go ahead and put this plug back in. I got 4 quarts of this, and always make sure you get the right fluid for it. Whatever research you got to do. This particular car, I had to get the transmission code, which involved calling the dealer with the VIN number. It's pretty simple. I'm just going to put 3 quarts in for now, and then I'm going to let the car down off the jacks and put it in neutral or whatever. Usually it says on the dipstick what you're supposed to do. I'll show you what I do with my used oil. Get these old diesel trucks here, and they just love used oil mixed in with the diesel. It's usually what I do with it. Make sure it's clean. These old mechanical diesel engines love used oil. It's good for the pump. That takes care of that. Hey, time for the oil change. It's always good to change these fluids when the engine's warm because it runs out easier. It's not thick. One thing I don't like about these Vibes is that the oil filter is way up there, and if you have one of them tools it's fine, but I got like 3 of them tools and they're all either too big or too small. Like, there's so many different size oil filters, it's pretty annoying. But channel locks work just as good. And it's always a good idea to make sure your filters are the same. I like to just put them up next to each other like that and make them kiss. That puts a little bit of oil on the O-ring also. and just hand tight. Well, I guess it depends on how strong you are, but you don't want to over tighten oil filter. For me, hand tight is okay. I guess if you're an Olympic weightlifter, hand tight might be too much. Hand tight is fine. The old International's making out pretty good today. I think we got about at least, yeah, good 2 gallons of free fuel for it. So 2 gallons, what's that, about, I don't know, 20 miles. Can't beat that. Looking good. Alright, let's get this thing turned around. I just want to show you this. You ever hear the saying a 5-minute job is just one broken bolt away from a all-day job or whatever? Well, I was beating on this rotor, getting it off, and it just started to crack right here. You probably can't even really see it, but a lot of cases what happens with these when they get, yeah, look how bad that is. I mean, that whole side of that thing is just gone. So, yeah. Usually I don't let things go this bad. I'm actually kind of disappointed in myself, but whatever. Yeah, but anyway, sometimes you beat on these so much that this whole ring comes off, and then you're kind of screwed because there's nothing to beat on to get it off. And these are a real pain in the ass because you got a drum brake inside there for your parking brake, and they like to hold it on too, and it makes it real fun to get off sometimes. But I wanted to say, that's actually what these screws are for right here. Most cases, a lot of cases I've seen, they don't have the screws on them, but this is so you could put a bolt in here and tighten it, and it'll actually work it off. But the issue is, when these things get so old, these threads get so rusted out that, I mean, like these ones here, you can't really see them. You can't even really get a bolt in there. They're so rusted. So in a perfect world, they work good, but other than that, I mean, sometimes. But yeah, if this breaks off and those don't work, then you pretty much got to get the torches in there, heat it up, hope you can get it off. Or sometimes in the past, I've had to get the angle grinder and cut them and chisel and break them. They're cast, so they usually break easy, and that's, a lot of times you just score them with an angle grinder a couple times and smash them with a hammer and a chisel, and you get them off, but sometimes it turns into a pain. But yeah, I just wanted to share that, so get our new one opened up. The back brakes are pretty much the same as the front ones. Most cars, a lot of older cars had drums in the back. You can say what you want, but I actually like drum brakes better than disc brakes. That's my personal preference. I just like them better. I think I'm nuts, but I actually think drum brakes are better. And another thing about these is they got these rubber plugs in there to adjust your drum brakes. Make sure you get them out and put them in the new ones. I'll just clean these ones just like we did the front ones. Everything we're doing here is the same as what we did on the front. These particular caliper, these brake pad set didn't come with these little sheet metal, whatever, slides, whatever you call them, so let's reuse the old ones. Use a lot of grease on them. Alright, we're ready to throw this together. Alright, we're going to take this car on a little test drive here and see how everything works out. One thing that I wanted to go over about brakes, if you don't know much about it, is when you change the brakes on a car, the first thing you want to do before you do anything is pump the brakes up, because at first your brake pedal is going to go right to the floor, and if you throw it in gear and you're backing up, you might not be able to stop or whatever, because displaces, you know, you got to tighten the calipers up against the pads again to get everything tight, and that takes fluid, and you got to pump it a couple times. But yeah, just make sure you do that. So we're going to do that now. You can hear it went all the way to the floor. And then that just took one time. Now it's tight again. But that was the back. On the front, usually you got to pump it a couple times. It goes right to the floor a couple times. So let's just take this thing for a ride and see how it works. We're just making sure we're not hearing any kind of squeaks or any kind of noises or anything like that with the brakes. We're going up a hill. On the way back, we'll test it out. I already got a lot better feeling on the brake pedal. It already feels way better. Yeah, I don't have any kinds of feedback from the brake pedal now. Stops a lot better too. You don't realize how bad your brakes are until you change them. You think they're okay, and then you put new brakes on it and it's like a whole different car. Like, this feels like a brand new car. So the brakes work beautiful. I have no complaints at all. So now we're going to double check that transmission fluid. Alright, now we have the car idling in neutral and it's warm. Let's see what we got here. That looks like we're about a quart shy. Put the rest of what we got in here. There we go. Alright, we're right at the bottom of the hot line. So I think that's good. You know, look at that side. This is the hot. These are the two hot notches here. So we're right there. So, and I only drove this car about a mile just now. So, you know, I'm sure when you drive it 10 miles, it's going to get hot and it's going to expand. So I think we're good. So remember before in the video, I was talking about the master cylinder expanding when we push the pistons back on the caliper. When we first started, it was at the full line. I don't know if you could see it or not, but it's way up here, which the right thing to do would be to drain some of it out, but I'm not going to worry about it because it'll go back down, you know, to the max line. So but yeah, that's what happens when you do brakes. They get full when you put new brakes on it. So, but yeah, I just wanted to show you that. So next thing I'm going to do on the Vibe for now is, a couple weeks ago I grabbed this hood at the junkyard off of the same car, but the hood is blue. And the hood on that car is all dented up and it's pretty much trashed. So I'm going to take this hood and put it on there. The first thing I got to do is I got to jam this black because I want to do it nice. So I got to get all this stuff off here and get it jammed, and then we can get it on the car. it all sanded and wiped off, and this is ready to paint. So we're gonna get it flipped over here. I'm not gonna get to painting this part for a while, and I don't want overspray all over this because I don't want it to look like a pile of shit going down the road. So if this was something you really didn't want to get all dirty, you'd mask it all off. But for now, I'm just gonna take some of this 2-inch tape, just go around the edge and back tape it. I'll keep some of the overspray from getting on this side of it. Now you can see we got a nice edge right here. We're not going to get too much overspray on the bottom side. Alright, what I have here is some paint. It's not the paint code for the car, but it's just paint that I had left over from some other stuff that's very similar to the color on the car. It's like a metallic charcoal black. So this will be plenty good enough just to do the jams with. Supposedly if you stay 6 feet away from the paint, you won't have to wear a mask, but I like to wear mine anyway. Alright, I'm going to try something here so you can actually watch this go down. I don't know how it's going to come out. Alright, base coat came out pretty good. Looks great. Happy with it. Now we got our clear mixed up. Just mixed up a little bit. And we're going to get some of that on there. Alright, you probably can't see it too good, but here's our new hood. Looks pretty good. Got it on just before it rained, or got dark actually. So we got her jammed. Let's make sure it shuts good. Alright, shuts good, and tell you what, the lines, all the lines line up nice on it. This bumper cover is a little wacky, but I'm gonna fix all this in another video. So yeah, obviously this hood is blue and I gotta paint it to match the car, but we're not gonna worry about that right now. So what I'm gonna do is, down the road, when I get some time and money, I'm going to fix the bumper cover, because the bumper cover is cracked right there and needs to be painted. The fenders are dented. The hood was really rippled, so that's why I got the new hood in the first place. And I'm going to paint the hood, the two fenders, the bumper cover, and probably blend it into the door, do a good job on it. But I'm not going to do that right away. Alright, we'll just come in the garage here where it's light out, because it's pretty dark out, to finish this off. So yeah, this is the end of this video. You got everything done on that car. I drove it to work and back today, and brakes work really good. So I can definitely say it was well worth doing the brakes on that thing. They were pretty bad. So alright everybody, hope you enjoyed watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.